balance, moving it away from the magenta just a little bit and putting it on the skin. Or the other thing you can do is there's a choice called color down here. And if you click on the little rectangle that's on the right side, you can choose a color to brush into your image. It means to shift your image towards that color. And what you want to do is choose the opposite of the color that is inflicting on your image. You know, if you have, so if you have red cheeks, you want more of a cyanish or bluish that you're putting in. It's not that you want the image to look cyan or blue. It's that blue absorbs its opposite. So blue actually absorbs yellow. Cyan is going to absorb red. So what you could do is say you want a little bit of cyan, and then come in here and just brush a tiny amount of it in there, and it will start absorbing some of that red. It's kind of a counterintuitive thing where you're thinking, I don't want the image to look cyan. But what happens is every color has an opposite. If you look at a color wheel, they're usually directly across from each other. Had I known I was going to get the question, I'd have a color wheel open here and I could show you that. But every color has an opposite. And you can easily figure out, if you have Photoshop, the opposite of red, green, and blue. Those are convenient ones to know by looking in the info panel in there, because they're listed directly across from each other. And those are ones that I have memorized. I'll show you that in just a second. But if there's any color you have too much of in your picture, you can use that little choice called color and choose the opposite of the color you're thinking of. And just put a hint of it in there, and it will absorb the opposite color and reduce it. If you put too much in, then you start noticing the cyan or blue showing up in your picture. So, didn't know this was going to take this long to launch, but we'll. Okay, if you're in Photoshop, you can go to the window menu and choose Info. And in the Info panel, directly across from each other, it will show you the opposites of each other. This stands for red, green, blue. This stands for cyan, magenta, yellow. So if she has too much magenta in her cheek, you can introduce some green. It would absorb the magenta. Put in too much green, you'll absorb all the magenta and start making it look green. If it's too red in the cheek, then you could introduce cyan into the picture. Cyan, this is like a seesaw or teeter-totter, where when you put in more of the opposite, it automatically reduces what would be on the other side of your seesaw. And so this is one thing that's useful. I remember these because your images are either in RGB or CMYK mode, and they're always mentioned in that order. I never hear of anybody saying you're in GBR mode. They just don't say that. They say RGB. Some people used to, being in the printing industry, though, say these in the order that they're printed in, so sometimes they change the order of those. But in Photoshop and in all other general programs you use, they're usually in the same order. So if you can memorize the order that they're in, then you can always say, what color is it I'm missing? Or what color is it I have too much of? If it was red, I'd think it's the first letter of RGB. So what's the first letter of CMYK? That would be the opposite. So, all right, so anyway, that's what you could do, is introduce the opposite color into the image. And it should help to absorb what you're trying to get rid of. All right. There are a few things that are useful when it comes to humans when you're using the adjustment brush. And so, oops, I didn't know I was in the adjustment brush yet. Let me just darken this image a little bit for my screen. This is Cassandra, a friend of mine. And there are a couple things that don't help when it comes to people. One of them is sharpening their entire face. Isn't always a good idea because you exaggerate any imperfections in the skin by sharpening the entire face. Sharpening things like eyelashes and the teeth and things like that, the hair, that's great. But sharpening the middle of the skin is going to exaggerate any imperfections, and sometimes people don't like that. So one thing is, I know we haven't talked about sharpening yet, but if I go under detail here, this has had some sharpening applied to it. If I can go and glance at how much sharpening is applied under the detail tab, in this case, for this particular image, it's at 74 for sharpening.